All right, it's live.
Sarge says hello to you and to YouTube.
What? What?
Sarge, he just sent me a Snapchat.
Oh,
I told him we're recording.
okay. Ready?
Sure thing.
All right. Three, two, one.
Welcome to another episode of Around the 412. We are part of the Pod Hub Network and All Steelers, and we are sponsored by Keeks Barbershop. I'm Tyler, and with me, as always, is Smitty. What's going on, man?
What's going on? Just the two of us this week. Um, got a lot to talk about actually, so it's probably a good thing that we don't have a guest this week because we can just kind of talk about the latest in the Pittsburgh sports and around the leagues and do all that fun stuff. I know
Yeah,
it's been a depressing week or so for Pittsburgh sports fans, so we're getting ready to dive into it. But
for sure.
there
And
is
thank you. I was gonna say thank you to the Cardinals for giving us this time slot.
well, I mean, it's a good and bad thing because we want to be losing games from one perspective, but we're going to talk about that because that might actually not matter with the way depending on what the MLB does with the draft. So,
Yeah.
but before that, tell you guys about Keats Barbershop. Keats Barbershop is an old-fashioned barbershop located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. He's open 11 to 7 Tuesday through Friday and 9 to 4 on Saturday. And every Tuesday, he does $5 off for military personnel, first responders, and nurses. Again, that's Keats Barbershop, 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. So, like I said, a lot to talk about as it pertains to Pittsburgh sports and the leagues in general. Um, we got the NFL training camps going on again. The NHL officially into the quarterfinal stage of their playoff format, and the number one draft pick. We know where he's going now. And then obviously in the MLB, they're kind of still rolling along, except for the Cardinals right now. They've only played a total of 5 games. And then
We're still
obviously,
behind them.
yeah, we're like four
That's
and a half games back to them
yeah, yeah.
based off percentage when they played 5 games total.
Yep.
But yeah, a lot to talk about. So we're going to get into it. If you guys have any questions, you can put them in there. The question that we got from Tyler, we'll talk about when we talk about, it was a topic we were going to discuss anyway. As I mentioned, with what the MLB might do with the draft, that was his question. We were going to talk about that anyway. So when we get to that, we will get to that. But let's start off in the NHL because the Penguin season came to an end, and I feel like this will probably be the sport that we spend the most time with. So might as well start with that. Like I said, the Penguins were eliminated from the bubble, from the return to play in the qualifying round against the Canadians, which, it's weird because like no one saw it coming, but at the same time, people were also, it was a popular upset pick as well, just because people were saying, Carey Price gets hot, 5 game series. That's, a potential upset there. Being 5 games as opposed to 7, that would favor the Canadians. And I mean, that's exactly how it played out. I will say though, Carey Price, in my opinion, did steal game 1, but it's not like I don't think he stole game 4. I just think the Penguins were a very bad team in those after going up 3-1 in game 3, they were terrible. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And there's a lot of changes potentially coming, as Jim Rutherford alluded to. And, at the same time saying that the core is staying together. So what I wanted to talk about, obviously, and, I'm kind of jumping around here. We'll talk about the Penguins' exit from the playoffs first and what we both saw. But, potential names, I guess, of guys that we could see move. If you're talking about keeping that core together, you're talking about Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. The only name that we would potentially see move there anyway, I would think, would be Letang, but doesn't sound like that's
Yeah.
going to happen. So, I mean, for some reason, the first name that comes to mind is Patrick Hornquist. Just because of what he makes. The fact that, I don't know if Rutherford considers him part of the core, but every time, even going back to last season, when you talk about like wanting more out of guys, he was a name that I would have thought popped up last year as names that Rutherford would consider listening on.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're paying $5.5 million to a guy that's not playing in your top two lines, I think that, his name is probably going to be floated out there. Because, who else even comes to mind for you right away?
I mean, obviously, besides the obvious Jack Johnson, but that's going to be, even though he is the easiest choice to pick, he is the hardest one to move because you're going to have to find a team that is willing to take his contract, which is not going to be an easy thing to do. I mean, as far as we know, Rutherford tried to move him last year, but it didn't work out, which is why we had him.
Yeah, the article that Yoey wrote for The Athletic actually got resurfaced today, where it said, expect a Jack Johnson trade in the next 48 hours. That didn't happen, obviously. And there was potentially a move with Minnesota that was going to be made, with Phil Kessel and Jack Johnson going to Minnesota for Jason Zucker and Victor Rask, which, again, Victor Rask making $4 million, kind of like the forward version of Jack Johnson. But I still would have taken that because I feel like it's easier to bury a fourth line forward as opposed to a third line defenseman. Jack Johnson playing, upwards of 17 minutes a night. Victor Rask wouldn't have been doing that. It wouldn't have been that much of a liability. I really wish that Phil Kessel would have, accepted that trade. Obviously that didn't happen. Jack Johnson's still a Penguin, but yeah, I don't see from a hockey standpoint how you can have him on the roster next year. But from a financial standpoint, I know the ramifications of him not being so. Finding a trade partner is going to be very tough. You're probably giving up another asset in order to get rid of him. And if you buy him out, you're looking at monetary ramifications for 6 seasons, which I know that they would love to avoid doing that. So I think his only way out of here is a trade, and you're probably giving up another asset to do so. And it just sucks because it goes back to, why are we even in this position to begin with? There was nothing from a hockey standpoint that said you should have signed this guy at all, let alone to a 5-year deal. If they would give him a 1-year contract, hoping that he would have found, some semblance of what he was in LA or like his very early time in Columbus. And he was never like a great player, in my opinion, but, had he been a serviceable guy and you took a flyer on him for 1 year and it didn't work out, so be it. We could have cut bait. But now we're not even halfway through this deal yet. We're 2 years out of the 5 years through this deal. And we're already talking about, how can we get rid of this contract? So, it just goes back to we've won 2 cups with Jim Rutherford as the GM, and, we're always going to be thankful for that. But there's a lot of questionable moves, and I think that this sits right at the top of the list.
Yeah, I mean, I think of all the bad moves that Rutherford has made, this has to be by far the worst. I mean, I hated it as soon as it was signed. I know there were some people, and I was talking to actually people at work, that they said that whenever they signed that deal, they didn't mind it as much. And I'm like, I hated it. I was like, you guys must not watch hockey enough to know that this deal sucks, like just flat out. He's just a black hole on the defense. And I'm not saying that he brought Justin Schultz down, because Justin Schultz was bad on his own right, which is another thing that killed the Penguins in these playoffs. That pairing was terrible. And Justin Schultz has his own responsibilities that he failed to do, but having Jack Johnson as a partner does not help Justin Schultz at all, because Justin Schultz is kind of more like a Chris Letang, I would say, where he's more willing to pinch up and take risks. And when you have Jack Johnson on your pairing, you're not able to do that because he's not defensively efficient. So I don't know. Like, obviously that's the number one, but I do agree with you. Like, looking at Penn's cap friendly right now, you're looking at the guys that are still under contract, because the Penguins have a ton of guys that are either UFAs or RFAs. But the guys that are still under contract, I mean, you've got Malkin and Crosby and Gensel. None of those 3 are going anywhere. I would be shocked if one of those moved. Jason Zucker, he was one of the only players that I was okay with watching this playoff. I thought he played pretty well, considering the circumstances of the entire team. You're not going to move him. You just traded for a first-round pick for him. So then you got Brandon Tanev, Brian Rust. I don't see Brandon Tanev moving.
Yeah, and you just mentioned Brian Rust, and that's honestly the only, like, along with Hornquist. Not that I want to see him moved. He's one that came to mind.
Yeah. So I was gonna say when it comes to forwards, the only two that could, I mean, I would say Patrick Hornquist is the first one, and Brian Rice would be second. But I think there is a bit of a gap. I think like it's like Patrick Hornquist is up here, then there's a gap. Brian Rust, then there's a gap, then there's like all the other players. Um, but yeah, Hornquist for the money he makes, he's just not the type of player that he used to be. Like in those cup runs, he's not that type of player. I don't think anymore. So it's not worth it for the Penguins to have that contract if he's not going to produce like he did.
I don't know if you remember, but I pretty vocally didn't care for that contract extension, the Hornquist one.
Yeah, it
Um,
happened live on our show.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it made sense. I just and every team does it. You reward a guy for their past performance, not necessarily what you project in the future. But I just it was something that I saw coming, and not to say that he's not. He's still capable of scoring 20 goals, but I don't think that he drives play alone. And if you're putting him on the third line, which is primarily where he has been playing, these days, I don't think that it's worth it. I think that you would be better trying to recoup some assets there before he completely loses all value. And the way that he plays, he's a pretty often injured guy as well, and that can be frustrating for the fan base as well. You're paying a guy $5.5 million to suit up for 10 games and then miss 4. It's
hmm
a you give and take with the style that he plays, and you need that type of presence. It's just kind of the injuries that he's kind of started to pile up these last few seasons. I know that they frustrated the fan base because I see it and I hear
oh,
it.
for sure. It is frustrating whenever guys get hurt because I mean, and that's just part of his play style. So I mean, it comes with the territory, but um, it still sucks. And then I know some people will say we have Zach Aston Reese, which is a very similar player to Patrick Hornquist. And a few years ago, I would have argued, well, Zach Aston Reese isn't able to play on the top line like Hornquist was. Well, the past couple of years, we've seen him move down the lines. He's not really playing with Sid or Gino anymore. He's playing on like the third line role. So I don't really see Hornquist having that value of a top six winger anymore, which is what his dollar is. It's 5.3 million a year for the next 3 seasons. So, yeah, I mean, if it comes to a forward that's being moved, he definitely does make the most sense. Um, and if you look at the rest of the team, defensemen, like we said, Letang, like if one of the big three was gonna move, it would probably be him. But again, I just don't see it happening.
And I think that, I mean, that's who pretty much is being asked about. And I feel like Rutherford kind of shot that down. It's not
Yeah.
going to be somebody very well could be moved, and when Rutherford says that, we know how open, for all his criticisms, Jim Rutherford is a very open GM. I mean, if he says something, it's probably going to come true. So the fact that he's coming out and saying he's not going to, even look to explore a trade with their core of guys, he feels like they still have cups or runs at least left in them. That tells me that he's not going to even explore a Chris Letang trade. And then I look at the rest of that defense. They just paid Marcus Pettersson, Brian Dumoulin. Very good. I think that he kind of took a step back a little bit this year, but he played, 4.5 months of not playing hockey, and then all of a sudden you're playing here when he had kind of just returned to the lineup from a pretty devastating ankle injury. So I don't
Mhm.
expect Brian Dumoulin to, continue to play the way that he did in this bubble when we return to play next season. I think he'll, be back to the player that we've seen. John Marino, obviously, he's not going anywhere. And then, it's Jack Johnson and the other guys are free agents. So I really don't see anybody on the defense that would potentially move.
Yeah. Um, I don't either. But I guess that brings us to the next position. Uh, I do not think Matt Murray will be a Penguin at the start of next season.
No, and,
And
it's kind of
and
what's
it's
the
just
best? Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. No, what was your question?
Let's say what's the best route to go as far as him not being a Penguin. Is it better to look to trade his RFA rights to a team that wants to secure him, make sure he doesn't hit unrestricted free agency and have to negotiate that deal, whether do it ahead of time, or do you keep him on the roster, let a team offer sheet him potentially, and then just not match it and get the pick for that?
Uh, you know, I honestly think that the best route would probably be to trade his rights, just because I'm not certain that a team would offer sheet him.
Me either.
So I think trading his rights, because obviously that's better than letting him walk. Because if he doesn't sign his qualifying offer, he can walk, right? I believe.
Yeah, I
I think
believe
that's
so.
how the NHL works. But because he's still an RFA.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think you have to try to trade his rights because yeah, I'm not certain the team would offer sheet him. So, but it just sucks that we're going through this again with goalies because we did it a few years ago. But with the cap situation where the cap's not going up, there's reports of Murray saying that he wants an 8-year contract from between 6 to 8 million a year. The Penguins just can't pay that. I mean, they can't. And you've got Tristan Jarry, who, granted, it's a smaller sample size than Murray, but for the majority of this year, Tristan Jarry played better than Murray. And I think in his one game in the playoffs, he played better than Murray did in the other two or the other three. And that's not saying that Murray played bad. I just think that they should have made the move to Jarry sooner. Because the team looked dead. And one way to kind of like show a team like, hey, you got to do something is switching your goalie. But like the one goal that Jarry let up, I don't think it was his fault, really. I mean, there was four Penguins chasing one dude, or that were, and then the team came from behind them. But yeah, I just don't see any way that Matt Murray's on the team next year because you've got Jarry who made $675,000 this year. Murray made $3,750,000. Murray's going to get at least a $3 million increase, if not more. And Jarry, if you gave him a $3 million increase off of what he's making now, it's not even what Murray is making this year. So
Yeah.
it's an easy answer to me.
Yeah. The thing is, Murray has the 2 cups on his resume, obviously. But getting back to what I've said before about paying guys for past performances, he has that on his resume. But over the last 3 years, really since we've won those cups, he's been average, above average, but he hasn't, to me, warranted the numbers that I don't know if that's just a report that he's looking for those numbers, but I am not really of the mindset of paying goalies like that anyway. So even if Matt Murray has been fantastic over these 3 years, I would be very weary of paying him upwards of $8 million, just because we see how sour those deals go very quickly. And you're talking about, yeah, exactly. It's a small sample size for Tristan Jarry, but think about if you were saving $4 million by making that switch for a salary cap strap team like the Penguins, that $4 million is going to come in very handy, potentially preventing you from having to trade a guy like Bryan Rust just for cap purposes. Now, if they do it from a hockey standpoint, that's one thing. To me, that wouldn't be the move anyway. But we got into a situation last year where we thought, for cap reasons, we could see Bryan Rust traded. And, a difference of $4 million, like we're talking about here, could be the difference between having to make that move and not having to make that move. So, what they could, they're going to be looking for a 6th defenseman. Even if Jack Johnson is here, they're going to be looking for his right-handed partner. Who the hell knows who that's going to be? Very well, maybe they just bring Chad Ruhwedel back, and I'm not necessarily against that, but I don't know how that pairing would go. I would love to see Chad Ruhwedel on the right side on the third line, on the third pairing.
Chad Ruhwedel will sign next season,
but I don't think Jack Johnson would be. What's that?
Chad Ruhwedel's under contract next season.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah. $700,000.
For some reason, I was thinking it was just another 1-year deal.
He had
all right, well, that's good.
2-year deal. Yep.
So that potentially is the guy that's kind of the incumbent guy, but it seems like they're always trying to push him out anyway and be the 7th guy. But to me, I would be fine with him being on that third pair as the right-handed defenseman. But I'm kind of weary of what that would look like with Jack Johnson on the other side. Because as we mentioned, the only guy that Jack Johnson even looked somewhat serviceable with was John Marino this year. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe you play Pettersson with Ruhwedel and you play Johnson with Marino. And I'm sorry, John Marino, but.
And this is also if he's on the team. We're just hoping he's not on the team. But I also wanted to bring up when we were talking about Murray. So his first 2 years, the 2 years that we won the cup, he had save percentages of .930 and .923. And then the following years, it went down to .907. Then it had a tick back up to .919. And this year was .899.
Yeah. And granted, we saw the numbers, away from Jack Johnson, at least in the postseason where they were for him. But I mean, 2018, Jack Johnson wasn't on the team. So I don't know. I'm at the point where, and I would have no problem, if they somehow brought back Matt Murray. Like, I'm fine with him being the goaltender. It doesn't, to me, make sense for that to be the case. I don't think that he's $4 million better than Tristan Jarry as an option.
I would say I'm fine with him being the goaltender with like a little asterisk.
Yeah,
I don't want an 8-year deal.
Well, I'm saying just from like I feel like he can do the job, not talking about the contract he would be under.
Yeah.
Like, I still feel like he's a very good goaltender.
Yeah. But then when you bring the contract into it, it doesn't work out. But another forward that wasn't on the listed forwards because he was on injured reserve is Nick Bjugstad. Now, he didn't play for the majority of the year. Do you think that there's a possibility they could move him? He has a cap hit of $4.1 million for next year.
I mean, what is his trade value? I mean, what?
Not much, because he barely played this year. He played a small sample size on the Penguins the year before because he was traded at the deadline. So I don't even know. And when's he even available to play? When did he have his surgery? Like May or April? I forget when Simone and when he did.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, to be honest with you.
But I don't know. I don't think that he'd be traded, but I also wouldn't be against it either.
They might. I mean, who knows? They might still really like him. I talked about it on an episode we did, I think when it was right when he was getting healthy, thinking about, is he even one of Sullivan's top options? Like, can they trust him to put him in the lineup? These guys because they had been playing very well at that point. All of a sudden he comes back and he's right back in that third line center role. I think that you just look at, the intangibles that are there, the size that you can't teach, his presence defensively and everything like that. He's got a really good shot as well. I think you look at that and just see it like this is the prototypical ideal third line center. And, you just have hope that he's able to stay healthy and put it all together. So I wouldn't be surprised if they gave him another shot there to start next season.
Yeah, because he didn't really have one this year, which wasn't his fault. I mean, it's not really his fault he didn't play. He was injured.
Now the question is Jared McCann, because he's a guy that was healthy scratch.
He was rough. Not even just in this playoffs, but the end of this year, like all of 2020, he was just a rough player to watch.
Yeah, and you wonder, what's a guy like that going to be looking for in free agency?
Yeah, I mean, well, if it goes to arbitration, I don't even know what his value would be. Because, I mean, what's he done really? Because let's see. He had 35 points this year. Holy cow, that was more than I thought he did. I want to see his game log.
I feel like it was all lumped together.
Yeah.
He went like 20 games without a goal.
Yeah, his last goal he scored was January 14th against Minnesota.
Okay. Yeah, so that's well before play was stopped.
Yeah, and in that span of 21 games that he didn't score a goal, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 assists. Which, I mean, if he is what you want for your third line center, you're going to need more production than that.
Yeah. Okay, well, we did have a question earlier in the week that was presented to us regarding the Penguins from Mike in Illinois. Just talking about, when can we expect to see some of these younger guys on the Penguins? Could it be as early as next season? And Sam Pullen, Nathan Ledare, and P.O. Joseph. I would say that the best shot's probably for P.O. Joseph, just because you look at the defensive guys that are going to be leaving the organization through free agency. You have 2 of your top 8 that are free agents, and Justin Schultz, and Juuso Riitala is a free agent as well, correct?
Yeah, he's an RFA.
Yeah, so you have 2 guys that were in your top 8 exiting at least, and that's if Jack Johnson does stay here. I'm just going to keep saying that and hopefully jinx it, and he's not here. So maybe there's a shot there for him. I really don't see a way that Poulin or Laguerre open up next season on the roster.
Open up next season? I don't think so. I think maybe we could see one of them. I don't think we're going to see both of them, and the only reason I think that is because we're probably going to have a shortened season. Which, if we had a full season, we might. I would say Poulin would probably be the first shot over Laguerre. But now I'm not certain that we'll see either of them, just because the next season is going to be affected lengthwise.
Counterpoint though to that, with it being a shorter season and also coming off a shorter off season, you might see more injuries or guys just being too tired. The older guys maybe that you have in the locker room tired. That might be a way for them to find their way into the lineup just for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm assuming if you brought up Poulin, I don't think you put him on your fourth line center. I think you just put him on your third line center and see what you got. Same thing with Laguerre. I don't think you put him on the fourth line. I think you put him on at least the third line, because I mean they're not players that you want to be on your fourth line as it is. So you don't want them playing like those kind of minutes and those kind of styles, because your fourth line is just supposed to be a shutdown line.
Yeah. I mean, the third line, nothing can be worse than the third line we were throwing out there in the qualifying round versus Montreal. So they showed a little bit more life with Connor Sherry dropping down there in Game 4, which, hats off to him. He was one of the few forwards that was noticeable in that series, in my opinion. He's a UFA, so who knows what's going on with him in his future. But that third line, Patrick Hornquist, Patrick Marleau had no business, in my opinion, being in the lineup. I mean, at times he looked okay. Like it looked like the skates were still kind of there. Didn't necessarily look slow, but he doesn't generate any type of offense, and he's absolutely atrocious in our own end. The Penguins could not get out of there. If they would put that third pairing, which they did a lot, that third pairing of defense out with their third line, they were not exiting their own zone. They were atrocious.
Yeah, it was just
they generated no offense, and they had dozens of scoring chances against every single game, it seemed like. So by far,
you would have been better off putting Lafferty or Rodriguez over Marleau on that third line. Like if you kept McCann on at the center, put Lafferty and Rodriguez on the wing, because he just had no value. I mean, the whole line didn't add any value as it is, but I feel like they would have at least injected some livelihood into that line.
And that's kind of, that can tie into kind of the last topic as far as the Penguins. I'm not on board with firing Mike Sullivan yet, but I think that he should be on the hot seat and rightfully criticized for his coaching over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, look at his 2 playoff losses. The last two playoff series, he has been severely outcoached, and I don't want to say it's kind of like he has the Dan Bylsma effect where he's very stubborn and not going to change his ways at all. But the last 2 series, it's kind of like what it seemed like. Like he was getting out coached and he didn't know how to counter that. He wasn't able to, and the Pens got embarrassed in both series.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to say, because it isn't like a breaking point, as I said yet, at least for me. But if you're throwing Jack Johnson out there in the last 2 minutes of a game while you're down by a goal, along with the third line that we aforementioned, with Patrick Marleau and stuff, what do you do? I mean, you are literally just wiping your team's chances away, any chance that they had of winning that game. And, I know that it isn't, just Mike Sullivan that's making these decisions, again, going back to Jim Rutherford bringing in Jack Johnson, but he is in charge of how these guys are utilized throughout the course of a game. And it just doesn't seem like there's been any type of adjustments. As you mentioned, it goes back to last year against the Islanders as well. And granted, you look at the defense from last year to this year, I think it was improved a little bit. At least, the top 2 lines, that third defensive pair was atrocious again. But if you're, putting that third pair out there while you are trailing in a game with just a few minutes left, along with the forward line that has generated no offense for you, I mean, it's not even like, it's not analytical at that point. You, like, with your own 2 eyes, if everybody at home can see that, like, what can you not see? And I think it just comes down to you use the word stubborn when you mention the Dan Bylsma effect. And I think that that's what it is. They're playing their most expensive lineup, and in Patrick Marleau's case, kind of like a pity thing, just because he's trying to win a cup, which is kind of ironic because by playing him, you're decreasing your chances of winning a cup. And I mean, well, that chance is completely gone because they got bounced from the playoffs before the real playoffs even started. So again,
whenever
if
they're
you're just playing your most expensive, most veteran lineup, to me, that's on coaching.
whenever they are down by 1 and you are trying to rally and score 1 goal, the top 2 lines of forwards and the top 2 pairings are the only ones that should be seeing the ice. I don't think anyone else should have seen the ice. Maybe occasionally thrown in that 4th line to give the 2 lines somewhat of a breather, but that 4th line needs to be on there maximum 30 seconds, and then you get out. Because that 3rd line should have never seen the ice. That 3rd pairing should have never seen the ice. And to me, that is just kind of showing that you're not even like, I don't want to say they're not trying, because obviously they were trying, but I just don't know what's going through your head as a coach when you're throwing out that pairing defensively and you're trying to tie the game, or else your season's over. It's not like you have another game. That's what I don't understand, is that their lack of urgency was very questionable.
I think what it comes down to is just misjudgment, and they feel that there's too much faith, I feel like, and guys that don't deserve to have that faith. Again, it seems like they fully believe that Jack Johnson is more the player that they think he is than we think he is, for whatever reason. Is it just because of the dollar amount that he makes, or are they actually that blind to what's happening? It beats me. But again, maybe they just believe in too much in what they're doing and aren't willing to change their ways or listen to the information that's there, because all evidence will show you that you shouldn't have signed him to begin with. He should not be playing 17 minutes a night. And there's no reason that the 3rd line should have been playing the minutes that they were as well, because they by far were the reason that they lost that series, in my opinion. Obviously, you needed more scoring chances, but if Jack Johnson, Justin Schultz play less, that 3rd line plays less, the Canadians would have been generating no offensive opportunities at all in that series.
Jack Johnson and Justin Schultz in that final game played 2 and 3 minutes more respectively than Marcus Pettersson.
Yeah.
Why is that a thing? I mean, John Marino played 18 seconds more than Justin Schultz, and he played 1 minute and 20 seconds more than Jack Johnson.
And that's only because of the penalty kill. Marino's on the penalty kill.
Yeah. And I don't want to overplay the players, but I think Sid is perfectly capable of playing a little over 20 minutes a night. And a lot of the time he regularly does. He didn't reach 20 minutes. And I think that's because you're rolling out those lines that you shouldn't have been at the end of the game. You should not have, you're the only centers that should have been on the ice were Sid or Malkin. No one else should have been on the ice at center in that last 4 minutes of the game.
Again, I just feel like it's too much faith in what they're doing and thinking that everybody that they put out there is capable of doing the exact same thing because they play in their system.
Well, obviously they're not, because they lost in a 5-game series 3-1 to the 24th seed in the NHL, and last year they got swept by the Islanders. So obviously what they're doing is not working.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a very frustrating time. And, in my opinion, I do not think Mark Recchi is back as coach. Because
that's an easy change to make, I feel like. Yeah, I mean, one that I would agree with it and everything like that. But that's a much easier change to make than obviously, firing Mike Sullivan.
I don't think Sullivan is going to be fired. But I think people around him could and will be. And I think one of those is definitely going to be Mark Recchi, because I'm pretty sure he's in charge of the power play, and that power play is a black hole. It sucks so bad. I would rather what did I tweet? I said I would rather watch a documentary on Renaissance poetry than watch that power play. It's like I would rather play 5-on-5 than have their power play on the ice.
They're 2 years removed from being the number one power play unit.
26.1%.
Yeah.
And part of that is because they don't have Phil Kessel And even though so many people hated Phil Kessel on that right wall because he never took slap shots like Ovechkin does, he was like the quarterback of the power play, and everything flowed through him, which they can't
Very
do
underrated
anymore.
passer.
Yeah, everybody sees him as a goal scorer, but at least on the power play, very good passer. And without him, and without Tocchet, I feel like Tocchet, people undervalue him or like don't realize that he was a big part of that power play too. It's just gone.
Yeah, and they haven't. Yeah, they haven't replaced it. It's kind of like the search for a third line center. They're searching for their new Phil Kessel on the power play, and it doesn't need to be one guy like that. But if it's not going to be, you need to revamp the process because you can't do the exact same thing as you did when you had Phil Kessel when you don't have Phil Kessel.
And what are they doing? Throwing Justin Schultz on the first power play. This isn't 2017 anymore. Like whenever they were throwing him on the first power play and Letang's on the bench, I'm like, what are you thinking?
Yeah,
he's not that player anymore.
And I'll to wrap up this conversation and move on to the MLB, I will say that it was very frustrating, but it's hard to put all my eggs in that basket, considering it's a 5-game series after 4.5 months off, where you can look at it as another season starting up, and we know any team can come out of the gates slow or hot. But those guys, if they would have thrown out their best 5-game stretch and lost because Carey Price stole the series, so be it. But again, I just think it goes back to a lack of, intensity and desire. They just didn't look like they wanted to be there. And you would have thought it was the other way around, considering Montreal came into this thing tanking at the trade deadline, essentially, and had no business being there. So, it's discouraging for sure. And I do agree that some changes need to be made because it's also following up a terrible year in 19 as well. But at the same time, we are talking about, just a 4-game series that they played after 4.5 months off. So it's kind of hard to just be, change everything.
Yeah, I agree. But and I think we would be talking a little different too if last year against the Islanders didn't happen as well, but it did.
Yeah.
So it just makes it more discouraging. But because of that, we had a shot at Alexis Lafreniere.
Oh, wait, yeah, I forgot about that part.
It didn't happen.
Yeah. I said we were going to move on to MLB. Completely forgot about the draft. They did have a 1-8 shot, 12.5% at the number 1 pick, which went to the Rangers.
Rigged.
Which went to the Rangers.
The ball was weighted.
I would be – so, I mean, like, it sucks for every team that's not the Rangers that was part of that. The Maple Leafs ball, though. Like,
yeah, the double doink.
Yeah. Like, I can't imagine.
I saw someone tweet Steve Dangle, and he's like, he was just like, I was waiting for someone to send me this.
But, okay, so the Penguins are picked 15th overall as opposed to first. I mean, that's quite a drop. But they have the choice, if you want to say it, of not sending that pick to the Wild and deferring that pick to next year, which that's what they're going to do. They haven't picked, as you mentioned in the tweet, I know Nick corrected it, but I knew what you were trying to say. They haven't had their own selection this high since 2006.
Yeah.
So, and you wouldn't expect that they would be picking that high again next year, or hopefully not. So, yeah, they're going to send next year's pick to the Wild to complete the Jason Zucker trade, keep the 15th overall selection this year. We'll see if they actually make a pick with it, with based off their philosophy kind of changing. I think that this is another class that Rutherford would like to have, that first round pick. But I saw that you edited the notes a little bit. I have not, really dug into this, but you apparently have come up with 5 names that are going to be sitting, you think, around pick number 15. So
I did. I came up with my top 5 picks that are realistic at 15. Now, I could have said, oh, we can get Alexis Lafreniere at 15. Like, obviously, that's not going to happen. So these are my top 5 that could be at 15. So I will just go through 5 through 1, and I have a little bit to talk about with each of them. So number 5, we have Caden Gould. I think his last. It's either Gooley or Gould. I think it's just Gould. He's 18 years old. He's a left-handed defenseman out of Prince Albert Raiders in the WHL. He is 6'3", 187 pounds. And in 2019-20, he played 64 games, scored 11 goals, 29 assists, 40 points. Some of his strengths include puck handling, acceleration. He's a good skater. He's got decent speed, good passer. He's a hitter, which is different than a lot of defensemen that we have, and he is good defensively. He's tough to play against because of his size and his reach, and he's a two-way defender, but he's not overly offensive. He's a better defensive player, but he can be decent at offense. As we said, he had 40 points in 64 games. He has a good first pass out of the zone, which Letang did not have a lot of in this series, including the last game where he shot it straight up the middle and caused for a scoring chance the other way. Uh, but I guess they say he needs to work on some of the mental aspects of his games, which isn't a huge knock for an 18-year-old playing defense. I think that comes with maturity and growth in the game. But yeah, so Caden Gould is in the number 5. Number 4, we've got Dawson Mercer, who's an 18-year-old. He's listed at right wing, but he played the majority of this year at center for the Chicoutimi Saguenayes, or I don't know. It's in the QMJHL. So this year he played on 2 teams, actually. He played 26 games for the Drummondville Voltigeurs, and then he played 16 games with Chicoutimi. He had 18 goals, 24 assists, and 42 points with Drummondville, 6 goals, 12 assists, and 18 points with Chicoutimi. He is a good teamwork guy. They say he elevates the players around him. He's got good speed, good puck handler, nice agility and acceleration. This was his first year playing a full-time center. And he was 52% on his faceoffs, because before this, all he played was right wing. But I guess he's an unselfish player. He looks to pass. He's not just trying to go for himself, but he's also not an elite scorer. He works harder than most of the players in the top end of this draft do for his production, because they have the natural skill. They're the flashy players. I guess he's a more grinder, works harder. He has a strong hockey sense, and he has top 6 potential and at wing, and could possibly play a third line center if you want him to. All right, so that's number 4, Dawson Mercer.
So far, the first 2 names you've mentioned, I don't know if you saw the Athletic put out their first mock draft for the NHL draft. Those 2 names went 16 and 17.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, so number 3, so the top 3, I've seen various things on them. I was basing this off of mock drafts too, but I was also looking at like what I think the Penguins could need. Number 3 is Anton Lundell. He's 18. Yeah, he's 18. He plays center. He played in the IHFK, which is a team out of Helsinki, Finland, for the Finland League. He's 6'1", 187 pounds. In 2019-20, in 44 games, he scored 10 goals, 18 assists, 28 points, which doesn't sound like a lot, but he's also an 18-year-old playing against men in this league. It's a professional league, which I don't think a lot of people realize. It's not like he's playing against other 17 and 18-year-olds, so it could be tougher for him. But his strengths include shooting accuracy, puck handling, and acceleration. He is a complete two-way player, and a scout said he is the most complete two-way player in this draft. He's very good in defensive, or responsible defensively. They say his offense and defense are near equal, and he's a very good back checker. And one knock on him isn't really a knock. People want him to shoot more. He's more of the looking to set up people and looking to pass first. But I said, one of his strengths is his shooting accuracy. Instead of looking for the perfect shot, people want him to put the puck on net more. And he's not a flashy player, but he's just a more sound overall player, and he could push for a roster spot right away, which is different than the other people I have on this list. The number 2, I have Connor Zary, which Jesse Marshall loves a lot. He's 18 years old. He's a center out of Kamloops Blazers in the WHL. He's 6 foot, 181 pounds. And in 2019-20 for the Kamloops Blazers, he in 57 games, he scored 38 goals, 48 assists, and 86 points, which he gained almost 20 points as of last year in playing 6 less games. And some of his strengths are his puck handling, passing, acceleration, and teamwork. He's good, works well with his line mates. And he plays center, but he's a player that A lot of people that if they play center or junior, they could be looked to move to the wing. A lot of scouts are saying that that is what is in store for him. He's got very good hands and he's a smart player. He's a competitive and hard worker. He was a WHL first team All Star. And really, the only big question mark for him is his skating, which I know Jesse Marshall put out a video today saying that his skating reminds him a lot of Jordan Stahl, where his strides are very long and he's like a stand up skater, but that doesn't mean he's slow, even though he may look slow. But I think that's probably the biggest reason a lot of people would put him as a winger in the NHL compared to a center is his skating. But if he improved on that, then he could play either one. So yeah, number 2 is Connor Zary, and the number 1 on my list for who I want the Penguins to draft at number 15 is Braden Schneider. He's an 18-year-old right-handed defenseman out of the Brandon Wheat Kings in the WHL. He is 6'2", 209 pounds. In this season, he scored in 60 games, 7 goals, 35 assists, 42 points. His strengths include puck handling, strength, speed, passing, acceleration, and he's good with working with his teammates. He is listed as a two-way defenseman, which obviously he scored 42 points, but he is very sound defensively. He is a defenseman's defenseman or defensive defenseman, and he has an NHL-ready body frame. He is a type of guy that would play lots of minutes. A lot of scouts say he could lead the league in minutes once he gets to the or lead the league amongst the top leaders in minutes, playing like 25 plus minutes a game. And he plays lots of minutes now with very few mistakes. And scouts say he has a high floor, and the minimum floor he is a very serviceable NHL defenseman. So if that's his floor, his question mark is a ceiling because we don't know how high he could go. A lot of people say he could be like an Alex Pietrangelo if he had that type of ceiling, which is actually somebody that he bodies his game after. And someone said that this is a player that you cannot trade for. It's a player that you have to get in the draft because teams don't trade these kinds of players, which is funny because we got someone similar, kind of like Brian Dumoulin, which Brian Dumoulin isn't as offensive as him, but he's sound defensively and plays a lot of minutes like this kid would. But you don't see these types of defensemen, especially a right-handed defenseman, being traded a lot. And the Penguins definitely need defensemen, so that's why I have him as the number 1 prospect for pick 15.
Yeah, so he's projected to go 12th to the Panthers. Yeah. Other than that, and that, I mean, that's only a couple picks before, and that could obviously all change. Mm-hmm. But other than that, everyone else that you said is right there. I mean, Lundell is their projected pick right now at 15. Caden Gooley is right after that. Dawson Mercer right after that. You didn't mention Lucas Reichel, but he's projected at 18 to the Devils. Connor Zary to the Flames, and that's, the 5 that you mentioned. So 4 out of the 5 are literally 15 through 19.
Yeah. I was looking at different mock drafts, and I did see Braden Schneider actually was picked by the Penguins in one of the mock drafts I looked at. So are you just looking at the one that's on the Athletic?
Yeah, I saw that the Athletic put out a mock draft literally just today, so I took a look at it. Okay. Corey Pronman of the Athletic.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm sure I looked at that one. I looked at probably 7 or 8 different mock drafts just to see what's the general consensus of where these guys could fall, because I wanted to give a realistic expectation for who could be available around 15. So yeah, Braden Schneider, he probably would go a few picks before that, but I think according to some of the mock drafts, he could still be available, which is why I picked him. And because of the kind of player he is, and he's a right-hand defenseman, that's why I have him as the number 1. If he's there, I think the Penguins should take him. But it's kind of similar. Another player that I would love the Penguins to get, his name's Jack Quinn.
He was 11th on this.
But yeah, I just don't think he would even be available, which is why I didn't include him. So maybe Braden Schneider is a bit of a stretch, but yeah, that I just put together a top 5 list of the prospects.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what's going to happen, other than we know who's going to go number 1. So
yeah.
But okay, let's switch gears now, because it literally never ends for the Pirates. The bad luck, the misfortune just keeps happening. So let's start with some injuries, because Joe Musgrove was put on the IL with I believe triceps soreness. coming off, I believe he had an ankle injury that scratched him from his last start. So, this kind of comes out of nowhere, at least as far as the type of injury that it is. But it wasn't, at least the good news is we're not playing right now. They could make it retroactive. He might only miss like one more start, something like that. That's best case scenario. Now, another injury that we have suffered, Phillip Evans collided with Gregory Polanco in the outfield the other day, broke his jaw, and also got a concussion. Scary scene as he left the field on a stretcher. Obviously non-baseball related. It's terrible. He was putting it all together as a baseball perspective, but you never want to see that happen regardless. It just kind of sucks for him personally. From a baseball perspective, he was the Pirates' best hitter to this point, one of their most consistent hitters.
As we all predicted.
A guy that you were just looking for ways to get into the lineup every single day. And it was a great story because he, was coming, he's kind of like a journeyman, played on the Cubs AAA roster last year, finally found a home here after signing a minor league free agent deal and, took his opportunity and ran with it. And it was awesome to see. It's been a great story for the Pirates. And now it has, this ending to his 2020 season because being put on the 45-day IL, that injury season this year because you're only playing 60 games. So very unfortunate, both, from a personal standpoint, also a team standpoint. But again, the hits just keep coming for the Pirates. They've had injuries all year. They stink. What more is there to say? And you're just hoping that
really
it ends
just flat out right there. They
Yeah.
stink. Don't really need much analysis after that.
I mean, it is what it is. It's funny because like we all expect this, and then everybody wants to be like mad when it actually comes to life. Like this is what people have been saying was going to happen.
That's why. That's what I don't understand is that I have people that I know that said the Pirates are going to be terrible this year, and I'm like, oh yeah, well obviously, and then it actually happens, and they expect they act like they were expecting more and they wanted a better team, and like you literally said a month ago that they were going to be terrible. What changed? And it's like they just want to be mad about the team, even though they expected them to be bad.
Yeah, and I mean, they should be bad right now. Look at when you overhaul your coaching staff, your front office the way that they have, and you look at the roster, they are going to be bad for this year, probably next year as well.
Bad. This is very, very bad.
Hopefully, in a couple years, we start to see signs of life like we did.
I'm hoping 2022 is whenever they start to look more decent.
I was just saying, kind of like the 11 and 12 Pittsburgh Pirates, where I'm not saying they're gonna make the playoffs right away, but the young core, the next core of guys start to show you something where it's like, okay, we have something to build off of.
You see signs of life. That's what you want to see in those years.
Yeah, and you hope that whoever is their draft pick in the next year could be part of the future, and based off where the standings are, you'd think that they'd be given the number one pick if the season ended today. However, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the case. The MLB,
because of course it doesn't.
The MLB has not decided how they're going to handle the draft lottery. They could, make it random. It could be like a lottery process where every team has a certain percentage. It's not just the worst team gets the pick. Which
we have the highest percentage though.
Why wouldn't it be? I haven't seen the possible options, but I would assume so.
It'd be kind of unfair if we didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also saw that Steven Nesbitt said that they could possibly just use the draft order from last year.
That doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make sense to me either. Why does last year's draft order affect this year? Some teams are not going to be around the same place wins wise or losses wise that they were last year. So
I would be against that even if they didn't play a single game this year. It would make more sense, but I'd still be against it.
Yeah, if they didn't play a single game, they should just have a lottery.
Yeah, and I understand that there's teams playing different numbers of games and stuff like that. I think it should come down to the lowest win percentage.
Listen, it's not our fault that Miami, I don't even know what they did, but I know the Cardinals went to casinos. It's not. Why do we have to suffer for them being idiots? Just give us their first overall pick. If
Yeah.
we saw if we win 10 games this season, they better give us the first pick. Are you kidding me? We only have 3 right now, and we're at the quarter mark, so we're on our way to win like what 12?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember thinking we'd win like 25, 24. That's like
Again, though, you can't predict injuries. I mean, we've lost Mitch Keller, the Edgar Santana suspension. We've lost Birdie.
Did we even bring that up?
Game.
Did we even talk about Birdie?
Probably not.
I don't think we did.
No.
We lost. Everybody listening, we lost Nick Birdie too. Go buy a shirt.
Yeah, Bird Gang. Yeah, this team has just been dismantled, and not that they would have been like super competitive with everybody healthy, but with the injuries that have continued to pile up, it's been impossible. I mean, you looked at that bullpen, which shout out to Jeff. He's pitching really well this season. Finally healthy, got a new pitching coach.
Yeah. Which
so he looks good.
He's another like we can't say anything bad about the team on Twitter either because we got people that play on it to follow us.
No, I mean they get it though. I mean, we're fans first and foremost. I've had those conversations with those guys, but again, I don't necessarily see it as bad mouthing. I'm just being realistic about the situation. I think that it's just kind of what maybe a little bit more than what we expected to happen this season. Again, we kind of thought their win total would be in the 20s, but if you would have told me that they would have the injuries they've had to undergo, I would have told you, yeah, they're probably not even going to reach 15. So we'll see. Hopefully guys like Brian Reynolds and Josh Bell start hitting because that hasn't really happened yet. But who knows? Who knows if we're going to be able to finish the season? So it's all kind of up in the air. This thing's different every day. So, and a big reason why we might not be able to finish the season are guys like Mike Clevenger and Zach Plesac of the Cleveland Indians going against protocol and leaving the facility. So they're now on the commissioner's exempt list and can't be with their team because they chose to leave and go out.
How stupid are you? Like, you understand it took you this long to even get baseball to play again, and you decide to break your rules and go out. Like, I don't understand as a baseball player, why would you jeopardize you playing the game that you waited like 4 months to play?
Yeah, and that's why, because it's kind of hard to say, we don't want these guys to live as close to normal lives as they can. But again, you have 28 other or however many teams, there's 30 teams in baseball, but with what the Cardinals did, with what the Marlins did, with, a couple guys in the Indians now doing this, like, you have these guys jeopardizing this whole league for all these other teams that are like abiding by these rules and putting them to use and actually following these guidelines that the MLB has. And that's why it's frustrating. So as a guy on another team, I would be very upset with this. And as their own teammate, Carlos Carrasco coming back from leukemia, Mike Clevenger's, like Zach Plesac, at least they knew about that. They made him rent a car to go to their next series or whatever. Mike Clevenger was on the team playing with them.
Yeah, and he just chose to hang out with them, right?
So, yeah. I mean, it just shows a complete lack of awareness to me.
And then they came out with some apology, but you shouldn't even have to apologize. Like, you shouldn't. I don't know why you would think to do that in the first place. Like
the other two teams in front of you have already set the precedent for what could happen.
Don't put yourself in the situation that you need to apologize, is what I was trying to say. Like, I don't understand why it's so hard for these players to not follow the rules, or to follow the rules, not go out. Don't go to a casino. Don't go to a strip club. Shout out Lou Williams. Just, I do not understand what's going through their head, where it's like, why isn't the priority to play the game, and you're jeopardizing all of that when you do these stupid things?
Or if that's what then let them do it. If that's what they want their priority to be and not be baseball, don't have them be a part of it. Because
so how long are they on the commissioner's exempt list?
I don't know. I mean,
is it as long as they quarantine, I guess?
Yeah. So I would think, minimum a week, probably 10 days. Probably have to return like 2 negative tests or something.
Yeah. I hate people who are idiots especially the athletes that are playing the
I
games.
forgot to mention, also with the Pirates, they signed Henderson Alvarez, which is kind of an intriguing signing. He's touching 98 again, former All-Star with the Marlins, trying to work his way back to the big. So, again, that's a typical Pirates signing, though. Low risk, somewhat, you hope, high reward. Again, touching 98, so that's a good sign. Don't know if the hopes would be for him to be a starter at this point, if they're just looking for something out of the bullpen, but there's some intrigue there at least.
I mean, the way the injuries are going, even if he's in the bullpen, he might start.
Yeah. The MLB is considering a playoff bubble, which you look at what these other teams are doing, probably the route to go. They're talking, it could potentially be like California and New York or something like that. They would want to use multiple states, but you obviously have more than one team's facilities in those states, so you could use whatever's there. To me, that would probably be the best route to go for that. Again, there's going to be 16 teams this year in the playoffs, so they're going to need, a lot of sites to be able to use. It's intriguing. I'm curious. Again, it's, just kind of like in the preliminary talks for that to happen. So I don't know if there's anything too detailed about it. I threw out those two states. That's not,
I also saw playing in Chicago because they have two stadiums as well.
Yeah.
And I also saw someone say that I believe, I don't even know who wrote the article. I think it was on Fansided, but they said possibly just doing all California because you've got the Padres, Angels, Dodgers, Giants, and even if you want a fifth, you've got the Athletics. You can play in the Coliseum too. So you've got 5 stadiums in California that you could use for a bubble. I mean, it's kind of a large bubble, but it's still a bubble.
Yeah. I'm curious to see if talks really progress with that. But to me, I mean, it makes sense. One of the few things MLB's done recently that would make sense. So we'll see if it comes to fruition. Some suspensions have been handed out following an A's and Astros brawl. The Astros hitting coach, Cintron, however the hell that's pronounced, was suspended 20 games, which good.
I mean, when's the last time? I wonder if there's ever been a hitting coach suspended 20 games.
This is the longest. I don't know. No, yeah, this is definitely the longest. I saw that.
Yeah.
I don't know what the longest was before this, but this is definitely the longest for a hitting coach or an assistant coach or anything like that of those sorts. I mean, he literally, not to say that Laureano was in the right or anything like that, but he's literally like telling him, bring it on before he charged.
Which I never understood.
And then he has 3 other guys tackle him before he gets to him. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, did you watch the John Boy of that that brawl? I mean, it was funny. He was making fun of the fact that he was the one saying come here, and then you've got like 3 players in front of him, and he's just standing there. But I don't understand his perspective of it, where he's the one telling him bring it. Like, why the hitting coach? I don't
no idea. No idea why their hitting coach wanted to be like.
I thought it was funny because on the John Boy video, he was like saying how do you pronounce his name? Laureano.
Laureano is how I.
Laureano. Okay, yeah. Laureano. That's probably right. But it's like he said he was like trying to tell him how to throw a slider or a cutter or whatever pitch he was trying to throw. It's like he wasn't even like saying anything bad to him. He was just like saying that you got to like do something different with your wrist. But it kind of was funny because that's like the motion he was like doing. But then you just see the hitting coach just say, like, "Come on!" Like, the whole situation baffles me. It's so odd.
Yeah, and Laureano got suspended 6 out of that. So that part's not really surprising, considering he did charge the dugout and everything like that. But again, that's another guy that people are, going to put up right up there with Joe Kelly now for a guy that's going after the Astros. So,
yeah. Did you see I saw a tweet that was like, the A's and the Astros had a brawl, so Joey Kelly suspended for 12 more games or something like that.
No, I didn't see that. And then the last thing in baseball, this is some good news, I guess, in a way. The Reds' plan to bring fans back has actually been approved by Ohio. So we'll see if that happens. It wouldn't happen until like September or potentially the playoffs if they're allowed to host playoff games there anyway.
Do we
But
know
I
what
mean,
the plan is?
it's something. No, it
Mm-mm.
didn't show me their their capacity is around 42,000, I believe, something like that. So I didn't see a number per se or anything like that. But I mean, we've been talking about it on here. I just don't see. You can definitely bring fans back in some capacity, even if even if you're talking just a few thousand, like, and
Mhm.
easily be able to socially distance them in that stadium. Um, obviously ticket prices for as limited as they'll be will be higher. And the only thing to me that you would have to worry about in terms of socially distancing would be getting into the ballpark, leaving the ballpark, and what you're to do as far as in the concourses. To me, that is like the part of the plan that like they really had to present. And they even said like in the article, very like heavy restrictions are being placed to be able to try to make this happen. But like I just think it's cool, that they're trying to work this out. And again, Ohio like thinks that this plan is legit enough to the point where they've approved it.
Yeah. I mean, that is cool, but I'll be honest, with the way that baseball's been going with the teams getting cases, as much as I would love to have fans back in any sport, not just baseball, I think they should just kind of like chill this year and just not even bring it back. You're already into the season. I don't really see a point to bring fans back into the season, especially this short of a season. Like, why take the risk of anything happening this year?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with that, especially because, like I'm saying, it's approved, but it can't happen for like at least another month, and it might not be till even if they are able, if they're hosting playoff games, which again, we just talked about the bubble, that might not even be a thing. Say Cincinnati is in the playoffs, but yeah, like, does it really make sense at that point to do it? Like, I just more so think it's cool that they put in the effort to come up with this plan, and Ohio approved it. I think that's, what's the word I'm looking for? A sign of progress towards something.
Yeah,
Like
for
just
sure.
the fact that they were able to come together and approve this. When you have, I don't want to talk too much about it because we don't talk college football in here, but then you have like, the Big Ten and Pac-12 saying they can't play their sport even at all. We're not talking fans; they're just not playing their sport at all. But the kids are going to be on campus anyway, so
Don't get me started on that. I'm
that's
I'm very upset.
yeah, that's for another day because we're already running. We haven't even talked about football yet. We're running over an hour here, so let's talk about football, NFL football, not college football. To wrap up the show, maybe we can dive into a little bit of college stuff on the next show if we aren't, depending on what the show looks like, because there is a lot to talk about there. Lamar Miller signed with the Patriots last night. Kind of came out of nowhere. Kind of makes sense. At the same time, you look at what their running back situation is there now, and from a fantasy perspective, I want no part of it. Well, James White keeps his same role, in my opinion, kind of as the receiving back. But now between like Sony Michel, Lamar Miller, Rex Burkhead, like they have that. What's his name? They have a running back that was at Alabama a couple years ago. Something Harris, I believe his name is.
Najee Harris.
No, he's at Alabama now.
Oh.
Dang it, I can't think of what his name is. But anyway, their running back, their backfield is just loaded, and I don't want any part of it from Lamar Miller's perspective. Don't know how many carries he's going to get or anything like that, but maybe it's just an insurance thing. We'll see if Damian Harris. That's who it is.
Okay.
Washington cut Geis. The Washington football team cut Darius Geis following his domestic violence incident, which he turned himself in for, including a count of strangulation. This guy has been injured every season since coming into the league, and now this, and he's going to be looking for a new home. With stuff like this, doubt he finds one right away, even if he were healthy. Those two previous years. But yeah, when you get this on your resume now, it's going to take some time to find a new home, especially considering he's not some star player or anything like that. Unfortunately, that
would
does
be
play
different.
a role.
It'd be different if he was like an all-pro, but he's a guy that hasn't really played that much. I mean, last year he played 5 games.
Yeah, right.
That sucks.
DeAndre Baker, the cornerback, charged with 4 counts of robbery with a firearm.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. When you put this in the notes, when you put
Baker
Baker,
Mayfield.
my instant reaction was Baker Mayfield. I was like, there's no way I would have heard about this.
Yeah.
So I like Googled Baker Mayfield real quick, and I was like, okay, this is different.
I mean, DeAndre Baker, first round pick. I mean, this is big news in its own right. So yeah, 4 counts of robbery with a firearm. If convicted, minimum 10 years in state prison, could face up to life.
You know, I will never understand why someone in a position like he is, where he was a first round draft pick, you play in the NFL, why are you robbing someone? What need do you have to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll never understand it, but it's just, I mean, I don't know anything about like where he grew up or anything like that. And you know, a lot of guys come from, unfortunately, those types of areas, and that's just kind of like part of their lifestyle. Like, put the money aside. That's just the way it is for some of these guys, unfortunately.
I get that, but like, as soon as you're a first round draft pick, you're pretty much instantly a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you doing robbing people? Like, I understand, like, a lot of these players, they grow up in tough situation. They grow up in areas where it's a very hard place to live, and that's the kind of the culture that you grew up with. But as soon as you get to the NFL, as soon as you're a first round draft pick, you have to throw that out the window. You can't bring that with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's a shame to see that happen to someone like that, because, like you said, first round draft pick, you had your life made. Now you're throwing it away.
Yeah. Okay. The last couple things, kind of just tie in with the Steelers. Steelers, one of 3 teams with 0 players to opt out, which, again, you know, would have had no issue if guys would have opted out. I completely understand it. Total of 68 guys in the NFL did. It's encouraging, though, that, you know, the Steelers didn't have any. Shows me that the guys are committed. And
they're all in.
They're all in, and they are very comfortable with what they've seen at the Heinz Field, the way that it's set up, and they're comfortable enough with the NFL's protocols. I know I see a lot of people saying, you know, still doubting that there's going to be a season and stuff. I have no doubt in my mind that this season is going to start regularly. We might, you know, who knows what's going to happen once it gets started. But as far as kickoff is definitely going to happen a month from yesterday.
Yeah, I've told people multiple times, like, college football is one thing. I could see where that whole thing gets canceled. NFL, I don't see, unless something major happens that I don't even know what it would be, I don't see any hiccup happening before the season starts.
Yeah. And you know, the only question that we had kind of as far as opt-outs was Cam Hayward, because he deals with asthma.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously I hope that he's not taking, you know, some huge risk that he was like weighing very heavy on his mind. And I hope that he doesn't end up regretting it, but I'm very happy to see that he didn't opt out, because he's a huge part of this defense. And from a football perspective, absolutely love having him. From a personal perspective, he's the leader on that defense, although, you know, TJ's their best defensive player. Yeah. Cam's not too far behind him, you know, one of the more underrated players in football, and he's the vocal leader of that defense. He's the heart and soul. So I love that Cam Hayward is all in on this season, and I'm glad that he feels comfortable enough to be so.
I think that could also be testament to how the Steelers are handling the safety precautions that they are, because obviously he trusts the situation enough where he feels comfortable practicing and playing in that every day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and again, you need literally every guy to be committed to this. You can't have one guy go rogue and go do something out on his own and then come and jeopardize everybody. So you need everybody to be fully committed, and it looks like the Steelers have that going on. So that's very good. Ben, we found out exactly what the surgery was. It was to replace, or repair, I should say, 3 torn tendons that were attached to the elbow. So not necessarily exactly Tommy John surgery, but, you know, it's a major surgery for sure. You know, I can't downplay the severity of it. And to his knowledge, it hasn't been, you know, done to anybody else, at least of notoriety. We could potentially see this surgery named after him, from what I've been seeing. You know, like Tommy John's called Tommy John. We could have this surgery end up being called, you know, Roethlisberger surgery. So that would be pretty cool to have happen. And yeah, I mean, all reports are good as far as Ben goes. And, I don't think the teammates would come out and rip him if they weren't good anyway. But still, it gets you fired up to see guys, talking about Ben the way that they are.
The ball's whistling out of his hands.
Yeah, and I
Apparently.
was just saying, not even from like a football perspective. They talked, he looks rejuvenated. He looks thinner. He says he's, 13 or the lightest he's been in 13, 14 years. That's, going back essentially to when he was in his rookie year, his very first few years.
I wish I could say the same.
Which is great.
Yeah.
But, and that kind of goes back to what we said about the injury itself. Obviously would have loved to have been on the 2019 team. They're in the playoffs with him. No doubt in my mind. But at the same time, it was, I don't want to say it was a blessing in disguise again, because they would have been a playoff team, but overall, he got to refine his love of football, see how much he would miss it. And, get a year off of, although he had that major surgery, he took a year off of taking hits, was able to get in shape. He said he typically doesn't start, working out until a month or so after the season ends. He was working out though, as if it was the off season during the season last year. So his workout regimen has just been that much better. Everything about this was, it made 2019 suck, but as far as 2020 and the rest of Ben's playing career, I think it could potentially have been a good thing.
I agree. I mean, as long as that elbow holds up, I think that he could bounce right back, and this offense could be pretty potent again. They've got a lot of good receivers that he can deal with. They added Eric Ebron. I mean, if you also have a healthy James Conner, this season could be pretty fun, assuming that we have a full season and it works out.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I really do believe that with competent quarterback play, the offense would have been, at least average last year. They still, I think that Ben being there alone, just the presence, would have improved everything, and that includes the running game to a degree. But now, an underrated aspect of this team, they run their best with a fullback, and nothing against Rosie Nix. He was great when healthy, but if Derek Watt is healthy, he's one of the best in the game too, and he adds another element in special teams. That's neither here nor there, just as far as the offense goes. If this offense is average, there's no way that the defense isn't going to be at least like top 7. So I don't see a way that they're not in the playoffs this year, especially with the added playoff spot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think a healthy Ben automatically adds, like we said before, at least 3 wins onto your win total. So you're looking at 11-5. So yeah, I mean, we on our friend of the show, Jake Shavink, he said that the Steelers are going to win the division. I'm really curious. I want him to put out why he thinks so. But
yeah, we're gonna have to ask him. I was thinking about something that I want to start doing with the show. Potentially this year, but definitely next year, just because of the way that the schedule is somebody that's at least a friend of ours, or maybe covers another team. That'd be even better. Fan or covering, have them on the week that we play that team and talk about it. Kind of hey, this is, who we're playing. This person covers them. What can we expect? Next year we play the Packers, so it'd be great to have Jake come on. But yeah, I mean, Jake, yeah, he's going out kind of on a limb, I guess you could say. They're picking them over the Ravens, because that's not a popular pick in the NFL community.
And he said that they do it in 10 or 11 wins, which I'll be honest, I didn't think would be enough to win the AFC North.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think 10. 11 could potentially say they both have 11, but the Steelers have the tiebreaker.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going off of I think the Ravens are going 12-4. So I think they'll regress a little bit, but not a ton.
Yeah, I can tell you they're not going 16-0. I feel pretty safe in saying that. Not with this offseason.
Do people say that? Have people said that?
Colin Cowherd said they're going 16-0.
Yeah, whatever. They're gonna get swept by the Steelers.
And then the last thing, I put on here battles to watch. There's a couple different positions where I think it's going to be interesting to see who wins the job. The first one that comes to mind is the right tackle spot with Matt Filer kicking inside the left guard. It's between Chuks Okorafor and Zach Banner. I think that Chuks needs to win the job, and what I mean by that is, you look at that 2018 draft class, they spent a 3rd-round pick on him. If he doesn't end up being your starter at one of the tackle spots, that draft class does not look very good.
Mm-hmm.
Terrell Edmonds, a reach in the first. I still think he's a decent player, but was he a first round pick? No. James Washington, the second round, he's an okay receiver, but is he even going to get a second contract here? That's yet to be seen. Mason Rudolph, Chooks.
I like how you say Mason Rudolph and you don't even say a word.
Well, I mean, okay. So yeah, Mason Rudolph, maybe a backup.
I just thought it was funny. For the first two guys, you say something, like Mason Rudolph, Chooks.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything about anybody the rest of the way, to be honest.
Okay. It's probably not worth it either way.
Yeah, but I mean, so that whole draft class, I feel like Chooks needs to win a starting job here to kind of salvage that draft class.
Mm-hmm.
But Zach Banner, to me, is the guy with the inside advantage. All the work that he's put in there, they've used him as the tackle eligible, the extra offensive lineman a lot last year. And that was, he's put in a ton of work this offseason to try to win that job. What?
He looks good, physically.
Yeah. He looks ready to take on the role of a starting tackle in this league.
Mm-hmm.
So I think right now, as it stands, he would be my pick to win it.
He would definitely be my pick to win it if he came on our show. He tweeted, he quote tweeted us and he said, "I'll think about it," or someone else has said to come on our show and said, "I'll think about it."
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't done it yet, but we're still hoping.
Yeah. So yeah, to me, I would say right now Zach Banner would be my pick. Third quarterback between Paxton Lynch and Duck Hodges. A lot of people are talking about that. Paxton Lynch is a guy that we didn't.
We're just gonna forget about JT Barrett.
He got cut.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't even realize.
Yeah, he was one of their first cuts to trim the roster to 80 or whatever.
Gotcha.
So yeah, you're looking at Paxton Lynch or Duck Hodges. Duck Hodges obviously gave the team some life last year at one point, won some football games. Paxton Lynch, a former first rounder who they brought on to the practice squad and then ended up backing up the last game when Mason was hurt. They seem to think there's a lot of people that cover the Steelers that seem to think that the team really sees something with Paxton Lynch. And obviously I would think that the ceiling's probably higher than Duck, but I think that the floor with Duck is also higher. He is what he is. You throw him out there, you might be able to beat some average or bad teams with Duck Hodges. Paxton Lynch, maybe the ceiling's a little bit higher, but the floor is also, rock bottom. This guy shouldn't be in the league. And again, these guys are being coached by a completely different quarterbacks coach now, a fresh set of eyes, completely clean slate. So it's literally a battle. We know it's going to be Ben Mason. The third spot is completely open. I think if I were picking right now without seeing much, it'd be Duck for me.
I agree. And for the points that you already said, what you have in him. He's won games for you. He's not going to be overly stellar, but he might even improve on what he was last year just because they have Matt Canada. And playing behind Ben doesn't help or doesn't hurt either. He didn't get that last year. He didn't get that insight or to watch him. But
I think in a pinch, I would trust Duck more than Paxton Lynch, which is what you're talking about when it comes to a third quarterback.
Now in a pinch, which one are you trusting, Mason or Duck?
Mason.
Okay.
I don't feel too bad about Mason. I feel like the change of offensive coordinators going to do wonders for him. And if you look back at last year, honestly, before that hit, there were some, good signs, and then there were some good signs again in the Jets game. I think it's more the confidence than anything. I think that the confidence – now his footwork is some of the worst I've ever seen as well. But I think that there's some stuff to build off there if he is confident in himself.
I agree. I said it multiple times on our show last year. Every single time he dropped back in the pocket after the hit, he just looked timid. He looked like he was not trying to mess up or not trying to throw an interception, which is not how you want to play. You want to play confident and just do your thing out there, it was very frustrating to watch. But I think, having Matt Canada, actually having someone that could coach him, it'll help out.
Yeah.
What do you think about linebacker?
Okay, well, I was just say the last couple of positions that come to mind would be who's your starting, who say when you only have three corners on the field, who's starting in the slot because they see, like we saw Terrell Austin say today about Cam Sutton playing a lot more. So there's that. I was just say, your third inside linebacker, who's to be your third edge rusher. And then, like your starting nose tag. There's a lot of position battles, in my opinion. Not necessarily like for starting jobs, but as far as like the first guy in the rotation. So, yeah, I mean, I think that Mike Hilton's probably, the better true slot corner. But Cam Sutton, I love the way that they use him. It's kind of like almost like a third safety. He's very versatile. He can do a lot of things on this defense, and I'm excited for him to get more snaps. But if you were just having three corners on the field, just one guy in the slot, I would assume it's going to be Mike Hilton. But I mean, I could be wrong. But
if it means anything to you, passer rating allowed by Steelers secondary last year, Minkah Fitzpatrick was first with 43.1. Cam Sutton was second with 52.1. Joe Hayden had 60.9. Steven Nelson 66.6. Mike Hilton 84.8. And Terrell Edmonds 139.1. So bit of a drop off there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Cam Sutton's a proven player. He's played well when he's gotten his chance. So
again, I think it's only going to go up this year, but I don't necessarily think it's it means a loss of snaps for Hilton. I just think that we'll see more of all four on the field because again, with a loss, or if you want to call it a loss, whatever you want to call it, of Mark Barron, we're probably not going to see like three inside backers on the field at all. We'll probably see Cam Sutton line up on like tight ends and stuff potentially. It's going to be interesting to see how they use them, but I think that we'll see all four corners on the field a decent bit this year. So, and I mentioned as far as the inside linebackers, to me, especially just look at the way that the roster is, they didn't bring anybody else. Ulysses Gilbert's pretty much the clear-cut third inside linebacker with Mark Barron not being here and, not rotating with Vince Williams. Probably to see Bush and Williams on the field. I really hope that they give Ulysses Gilbert a true shot to play the passing downs.
Well, that's what I was about to ask when I wanted to bring up linebacker. Do you think there's a chance that he could push to even potentially play over Vince Williams in this season?
I mean, Vince Williams is so good against the run, and he can rush the passer as well from his spot better than most inside linebackers. And he's not necessarily bad in pass coverage. I think that people think that he's a lot worse than he actually is, and I think that the stats back that up. But I think that Ulysses Gilbert is kind of like, he has the skill set of a modern day inside linebacker, and he can cover. I still think that his ability to cover receivers and tight ends is better than Vince Williams, even though I said Vince Williams wasn't bad at it. I'm just not so sure if that happens right away this year. He's coming into just his second year, and he got hurt in his rookie year, didn't, complete it. So I think that Ulysses Gilbert would get some work in passing downs, but I don't think that he's going to be like necessarily handed the keys to that role this season. Right.
And you got to think that Vince Williams' snap percentage was going to go drastically up compared to last year, because last year he only had 36.5% of the defensive snaps.
There was a lot of talk of like would he get cut potentially? Because it seemed like they really liked Mark Barron last year.
Well, the fans really did not.
And you wonder, would he have been kept around if he was on a lower cap hit? Who knows? They could have chose to bring him back though too, and they didn't. So I don't know. What do you think as far as tight end?
I mean, do they normally keep three?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I was asking, if they're only going with one tight end on the field, do you think it's Ebron or Vance?
I think it depends on what situation you're in. If you're in a more of a passing situation, I'm putting Ebron out there. If you're in a running situation or you need a blocker, I'm putting Vance out there. So it's just very situational because they're two different tight ends. I mean, McDonald is very productive in the pass game when he gets his chances, but I'm still putting Ebron out there at least to start the season. That's what you signed him for. So, yeah, I mean, I know it's a pretty crappy answer, but it's very situational.
Yeah, I agree, to be honest. So, fifth receiver, Deion Kane and Ryan Switzer probably competing for that spot.
Give me Deion Kane.
They could keep six. They very well could keep six and keep both of them, but
I mean, I want someone to tell me, what does Ryan Switzer provide to the team?
I got to
Like,
give him credit. He put in a ton of work, it looks like, this offseason.
oh yeah,
Um,
I'm sure he works his butt off, but like I need to see some production on the field if you're gonna stay on the team.
Yeah. That's why I think he definitely makes the team. I think he's going to be given a shot this year. But I mean, I think that the leash will be very short, to be honest.
Do you think if they don't
get that.
if they don't keep Deion Kane, do you think they keep him on practice squad, or do you think another team picks him up?
I don't. Yeah, I think another team would pick him up. To be honest, I don't see a way that they'd be able to hold him on the practice squad. There's too many teams that he would be, a fourth option on instead of a fifth. I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just sucks because I like what I've seen from Deion Kane, and I've hated what I've seen from Switzer because he barely gets any production out of the slot, especially since Juju is going to be back in the slot this year. Yeah, at least you would think. And then when the return game, I feel like majority of the time all I see is fair catches. He's never like broken a big one as a Steeler really. So I'm unless he really changes something this year, I think it would just be kind of another waste of a roster spot. I mean, I agree. I think they're going to give him a chance, but I just don't see the value he has.
Yeah, I mean, everything that he brings has kind of been replaced while he was injured. So,
I mean, not that I want Deontay Johnson returning all the kicks, but look at what he did in his like few times he did it.
Yeah,
it was just like night and day.
Which is why, I mean, they could keep an extra running back, and like Kareth White to return. Maybe Anthony McFarland returns as opposed to just being like the third running back or something.
Did he return in college?
I don't know about punts. I believe he did return kickoffs at some point. Though.
Okay. He could learn. Just catch a ball.
And then the last one that like comes to mind, obviously with the loss of Hargrave, would be the nose tackle spot. None of the guys are traditionally that. So
yeah, I mean, if you look at the roster, the only one that's actually listed as a nose tackle is Chris Wormley.
Yeah. And I mean, we kind of talked about that on here with him. That's not, something he traditionally does.
Mm-hmm.
But, if they ask him to do so, he's going to do so. I still think that it will be Alualu who plays there when they have somebody in that position. It could be interesting, though, because, like Chris Wormley brought up when he was on here, the Steelers really go to that the most when they play the Ravens. Well, he is a former Raven, Chris Wormley. So because of familiarity and stuff, potentially he would have the edge there when they go to it the most, which is against the Ravens, his old team.
Yeah.
But I still think like, when they use somebody in that position, I would think that Alualu starts there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the roster right now. I think that makes the most sense. It's really not anything that I see. I mean, maybe they test out Carlos Davis just because he's a big kid.
Yeah.
But I don't see him
he's
being like a
rookie,
starter. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just saying maybe they like put him there in practice to see what he has. Because I mean, if you're looking at just the size of these guys, he's one of the bigger defensive linemen that they have.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Dan McCullers, but he's gonna stick with his defensive tackle role. He's huge, by the way. He's 6'7" as a defensive tackle. 6'7", 352.
Yeah. He should do more with that.
I know. Like that's the size of like an offensive lineman.
Well, I don't think I have anything else.
Nope.
We did launch Rocking Around the 412 year 3 1 week ago today, and we've already raised over $1,000 for it. So shout out to everybody that's already been a part of that. We talk about it a lot throughout the year. It's, the best thing that we do. I mentioned when I put out the video for the campaign that we are going with the exact same mission as we did last year. We want to find families in our area to provide Christmas for that they, typically wouldn't have that same Christmas. I mean, I can't even express to you guys listening or watching this what last year was like for us. It was so awesome. Like I remember when we were shopping. I mean, the first time I went shopping, I went with Sarge and Stubbs. They helped out as well, so shout out to them. But when you and I went and we like checked out and realized we still had the money, we were just like, "Do you want to just go buy that family a Switch?"
Let's go get another Switch.
Like that was, I mean, it honestly, it was the best feeling in the world to provide Christmas for these families. And then like when you sent me the picture of your family wrapping the stuff, like it's just so awesome to be able to do this, and that people, it's just something for people to get involved in together, which like this year especially we definitely need. So we understand that money is going to be tight for a lot of people, but if you are in a position to give, please consider doing so. I'll continue to put out like some of the pictures we got last year, some of the videos that we took, so you guys can see exactly the way that your money is going to impact these people, because it is great, and it's great to see the way that you guys respond and have already responded, and we just hope it continues. We want to surpass our goal we want to surpass what we brought in last year, which is right around 2,400. If we can hit like 3,000 this year, that'd be awesome. You definitely want to be able to do it for 3 families, which we did last year. If we had $1,000 to give each family, I don't even know what we would do. Like, I mean, we bought that extra Switch last year. This year, I don't even know what we're talking.
PS5.
I was about to say, like, the new system's come out, so who knows? One of the kids might try to throw that on their list, but
Yeah.
we'll see how much money we can bring in, see how much money we can do. But it's all on your guys' shoulders to do that, and we will provide the prizes for you guys for doing so. If you donate upwards of $20 or $20 and up, you'll be eligible to win any of the prizes. I've gotten a good bit of stuff so far, but obviously, like I'm just gonna continue to monitor and try to add stuff. So tickets to a future Penguins game, tickets to a future Pirates game, Kevin Newman Pirates white jersey, an autographed Minka Fitzpatrick jersey, an autographed Jack Ham pylon, an autographed Benny Snell 8x10 photo, an autographed Juju football, and then 2 autographed Joe Musgrove baseballs. So there's obviously 2. I'm not gonna give one person 2 different people who win the baseballs. So yeah, a good bit of stuff already, but we're going to be looking to add. So if you donate $20 or more, you'll be eligible to win any one of those things. Like I said, we've already raised over $1,000, which is great. I set the goal at 3,000. Let's see if we can hit it or surpass it. That would be awesome. But I think that's all I have on that right now. Obviously, if you're following us, stay updated to see what the total continues to reach. But again, the GoFundMe, it's our pinned tweet on Twitter, so you can go check that out and get involved with it. If you have, and again, I know that a lot of people have the mindset of, I don't want to donate just a couple bucks because I don't think it's going to make a difference. Whatever you can give, trust me, it's going to make a difference. We had a couple people last year who were complete strangers, literally just hand us money while they found out what we were doing. So any little bit that's given to this cause is great, but if you donate at least $20, you're going to be eligible to win some really cool stuff.
Yeah,
so again,
we literally spend it all too.
Yeah,
so
actually,
don't worry about that. Yeah.
Because I remember last year, we had spent all of the whatever we raised, and you wanted to get that one thing off Amazon, so you were just like, I'll just get it with my own money.
Yeah.
So we actually spent all of it and a little bit more last year.
Yeah.
But it was like, I don't even know how many. I know that I filled up like 3 buggies with Sergeant Stubbs. So, and then however many we filled.
Yeah, I know. Well, a lot of ours, I know we got gift cards too.
True.
Like the Walmart gift cards or the Visa gift cards. So like, it doesn't matter whether you donate like $1, like it's going to be spent in any form. So anything can help.
Oh, that's we always need to reiterate that. Literally, we don't, this isn't like to buy. When you guys donate, it's not like going to us in any way, shape, or form for the prize or anything. It's literally just going to everything that we buy. So every dollar that is donated goes to the toys or monetary, like we said, gift cards, whatever it might be, to these families. A good idea that we had with the gift cards last year was like, they could use that to potentially provide like the meal that they would have for Christmas. So that's a really good idea too. So whatever you guys donate is literally going right to these families. If you want to get involved in a different way, something else that we could maybe do is if you guys have like an idea of a donation for like a prize, you can do that as well. I know Tyler Hernley reached out to me and he's donating something that's going to be a prize. So like that would be really cool if anybody wants to make like a basket. Any way that you want to get involved, please just hit us up. You can DM us on Twitter at around the 412, or you can email us at around the 412@gmail.com. Other than that, we are sponsored by Teach Barbershop, which is an old-fashioned barbershop located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. He's open 11 to 7 Tuesday through Friday and 9 to 4 on Saturday. Every Tuesday, he does $5 off for military personnel, first responders, and nurses. Again, Teach Barbershop, 180 Brighton Avenue, Rochester, PA. And I think with that, we are done for this week. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Thanks for listening back. If you're watching, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because along with the giveaways I just mentioned for this, we are doing giveaways when we finally hit 1,000 subs, which we are just over halfway to. So you guys got some work to do before you can see those giveaways. But when we hit it, it's going to be, I don't know what to say, grand and glorious. I put the two together. It's going to be gland. It's a new word.
It's actually not a new word. It's in your body.
Oh. New meaning for the word.
Okay, there you go.
It's gonna have, when you search it, it will say two different things.
Right.
Your glands, but also something is gland.
An adjective.
All right. This is a terrible way to end the show. But anyways, it's been Smitty. It's been Tyler. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Peace out.